Welcome to the Monday Monologue. Well, today I'm going to talk about something that I don't think it's really backwards from what the industry standard says, but probably in a way it may be. I think the most important part of the audio stream is the source. What's going into the amplifier. And I know you read a lot about, spend most of your money on your speakers because that's what you listen to. And I understand that there is a kind of a price point or a level you need to get to with your speakers to be able to hear what your amplifier is actually doing and what your source is doing. But I do feel like there's quickly diminishing returns once you get past the $1,500 to $3,000 level of speakers, where the priority shifts to the source. And a really good example of this was at my audio club meeting I went to, or have gone to this summer. We've had multiple different kind of demo things, and we had a member that brought out their super duper Studer reel-to-reel deck that I think they paid like 10 grand for this reel-to-reel deck, which is about what a refurbished Studer deck goes for. And it's, their top shelf model. And he had several of those, $600 a pop reel-to-reel pre-recorded tapes that we were listening to. And it was just jaw-dropping at how amazing they sounded. And we were listening to these two, they call them their club speakers, which they're some nice speakers, but they're not $65,000 speakers. And they got a PS Audio solid state amplifier, integrated amp, and again, not a slouch, but not a crazy expensive amp, but putting that super high-end reel-to-reel deck in front of this thing just transformed it. And they've got a nice, I think it's a PS Audio CD deck that probably does the DSD and all that stuff. And somebody brought some SACDs, the super high-end, or the relatively super high-end CDs that are supposed to be much higher bitrate and all that stuff. And compared to that reel-to-reel deck, it was just not even close to what it sounded like. So later in the year, they had like a turntable demo thing, and I brought out my Technics 100C, which is the kind of bottom tier Technics turntable. It's $1,000, and then had the hand-picked, or I've gone through like 5 different pairs of step-up transformers, and ended up with these vintage RCA microphone transformers that to me sounded the best. And then my EAR clone phono stage into this system, and the club president, I asked him, was like, so do you think this sounds good? He goes, when you put the needle down, everybody shut the F up and started listening, and nobody went out and got snacks. That should tell you how good it sounded. And that was the only change, was the source. And to me, again, once you get to a certain level of amplifier and get to a certain level of speakers, then the really big changes do come from the source. And it's that old adage of garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have a good source, it doesn't matter how good the amp is. You can have $100,000 speakers, and if the source is muffled or isn't crisp and clean and sounds good and dynamic, the system's not going to sound good. And I really think that, at least for me, that's where I've been spending my money, is making sure that I have the best source that I can. And I think I was pretty lucky about my phono setup. Sometimes that whole, even a blind hog finds a nut every once in a while thing, that I just really got lucky with that phono cartridge and that turntable, And then, again, I spent a lot of money buying different step-up transformer boxes and trying different transformers until I finally found a pair that really were dynamic and had a great sound. And I think that was part of the whole process, was finding what step-up transformers worked best with that cartridge and my phono stage. And I've done some tube rolling in my phono stage. I've tried some different caps. I've swapped some other stuff around to get it really where it sounds good. And it's those, all that testing and everything went into the ones that I sell. That if you do buy one from me, it gets all the goodness that I've gotten out of mine. And since then, I've tried some different phono cartridges. Like I tried the AT33 Microline Stylus cartridge and ended up sending it back because it didn't sound anywhere near as good as that OC9 MXL does, and then or XML. And then I got that Koetsu that's supposed to be like, it was a $3,200 phono cartridge that I got for a little more than half of that. But I said, I've got a little bit of money to spend. I'm going to buy a really nice phono cartridge. And I was disappointed that it didn't sound to me as good as that AT one did. So I think there's some synergy going on with the turntable and that Phono-cart and all that stuff. But I've now decided that I want to play around with this reel-to-reel stuff more. And I feel like there's something missing in the playback electronics. And I mean, I don't think this is a stretch to use the analogy that the external phono stage made such a huge difference to my vinyl setup that an external tape preamp wouldn't do the same thing. And I know the tape decks I've got, I haven't rebuilt the electronics. I'm not a solid state technician, but I'm going to have to probably learn if I'm going to get in there. People are saying, like on that Tascam 32, you need to update the op amps, you need to replace all the caps, you need to replace all the transistors, and there's just a zillion parts inside it. And then you've got to realign everything and re-electrically align the stuff. And I bought test tapes and all that stuff to go down that rabbit hole. But then I started thinking about, why not just go to an external tape preamp before I start doing all of that? And just assume, maybe wrongly, but I don't think so, that a external tube-based tape preamp that has various EQs, because the tape deck I had is NAB, you can hardwire it to IEC, but yeah, then you're stuck with one or the other. You can't switch back and forth. Anyway, did some research, and the guys that do the Lundell transformer, that's the dealership for them in the US, Earnhardt Audio, they have a tube-based tape preamp that does NAB, does IEC at 7.5, and IEC at 15 IPS. And you can, there's some options they'll let you, do some different stuff, but those three sounded like the main ones to me. And then on the front, it's got calibration knobs for 20 hertz. I think it's 10K or maybe 1K, something like that. And then it's got 16K. So you can adjust like the bass and the mid and the high-end EQ. And I've got the test tapes and stuff to do that with, to actually, hook it up to a scope and do all that kind of stuff. And probably can hook it up to the Analog Discovery too. I'll have to play with that, which we'll be doing. And pull the signal straight off the tape heads to an RCA jack out to this preamp. And I think I may be onto something there as far as getting really good sound from reel-to-reel tapes. And so I know some of you guys are probably like, oh my God, you're fixing to spend a fortune. It's like, people have spent way bigger fortunes on audio stuff than I'm fixing to. I mean, if I buy 20 tapes of stuff that I really like, and that may be 10 grand, and it's like, I know people in this audio club, they're showing me they just bought, $75,000 subwoofer, and so it's all relative. And I think that's where I want to spend my money. And I've got a little bit of money to burn right now from some other investments and other things going on in my life. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to go down this reel-to-reel rabbit hole. And so I'm going to modify my Tascam 32 because the transport's fine. It's got almost brand new looking heads on it. We'll go over that as part of this whole, do a video series on this whole thing. Then we're going to get this Earnhardt audio. It's a Titan 3 2 preamp. I'll put the link below to that stuff so you can kind of follow along with this project. I think it's $2,100 for their tube tape preamp. It's kind of keep tripping on that word, tube tape preamp. Anyway, yeah, I think it's going to be fun. But now the real fun is I'm buying their preamp because I'm looking for like a reference. This is going to be something that's calibrated. The IEC curve's going to be spot on. I'll be able to like calibrate everything, and then I know, okay, here's what good tape can sound like. And I did the same thing with the Phono preamp. I've got a Darlington Labs Phono preamp. It didn't have enough gain for me, but I was able to get kind of the flavor and the sound that vinyl can have. And that's what led me down this EAR clone rabbit hole that I went down, was hearing what good vinyl can sound like. So that's the point where I'm like, okay, if I'm spending this money, I'm going to link a YouTube channel below. And please do this guy a solid, you guys that watch my Monday monologue. Go give this guy a sub for the work he's done. I think he's got like 1,200 subs, and let's see if we can double that. He did a really cool video series on making a tape preamp from one of those China kits. And he didn't do it with the EAR clone, and I believe that the EAR clone doesn't really lend itself to that because it's kind of a hybrid. It's doing some of it through the feedback loop, and some of it is done with the circuit itself. The Marantz 7, on the other hand, that the EQ's all done in the feedback loop, and it's got a total global feedback loop. And he does a great job of explaining how he changed it from an RIAA to an IEC frequency curve. And he did, I think, 3 videos on this, maybe 4. And, I scrolled through him demoing the music because you guys know I'm not a big believer in the demo music thing, but I listened to it enough to know that he's on the right track of something. And so I ordered one of those Marantz 7 kits, and we're going to be making a tube-based tape preamp on the channel based off one of those. And if that works out, you should be able to build one of those for under $500. And so for you guys that have tape decks and listen to tape, and you want to play around with pulling the signal off the tape heads to and it wouldn't be for the record, it's for the playback only, which is, to me, what really matters. Of course, the record side matters if you're recording music to listen to, but even more so, I feel like the playback side needs to be on point, and that's what this is. And I'm probably going to choose a few of those really nice pre-recorded tapes. They do seem to be coming down. Rhino Records has released some that I think are $300 a copy. And I know some of you guys, that's too much money, and I get it. There's people that don't want to spend that on an amplifier. So, I get that there's different price points of being involved in this hobby. But to me, I want to try it and see what it sounds like, because I believe the source really, really matters on getting good sound. So I did get some closeout pricing from MoFi, or they had a couple of, they called B-stock, of their quad speakers. So I bought another pair of quad S2s, because I love them so much. But I also bought a pair of quad S1s to put in my downstairs, which is the baby brother, and they sound really nice too. So with a sub, turns out to be a nice little setup. I'm probably going to have to up the wattage on my little workshop system. I got a 6BM8 down here, And with the clip speakers, it was just enough. And these quads are a little less efficient, so it doesn't really crank out the volume that I sometimes like to listen to. May play around with that amp some more. There might be able to squeeze a little more out of it. I think it's probably a limitation of the little 10-watt Ed cores I used on it, trying to keep the footprint really small. Might be able to squeeze some 15s in there. We'll see. But anyway, kind of off on a tangent there. But I think that's kind of it for this week. Sorry I missed last week. I've had catching up to do. Oh, this is my newest 300B build, and I'm trying to take what I've learned since my first 300B build and apply it to this amp. And we're going to be doing some stuff I learned from doing that 2A3 amp and applying it to this. One of the key things I want to do is have the filter caps for the output stage as close to the output transformers as I can get them. And this one has this larger 14-volt split filament transformer that I'm splitting into two 7-volts to run the voltage regulators for the 300B tubes. Kind of using up my last stock of these with the Hammond power transformers on the top. We're going to be switching to using the musical power supply transformers that have the specific voltages that the amp needs, so we're not going to have to add this inside it. That'll simplify the wiring and clean up the power supply. But yeah, we're trying to make this a shorter signal path, simpler to build amplifier. The other one sounds great. I've been listening to it for years, so that's not the issue. I just want to simplify the wiring and kind of clean up, shorten the signal path, which will only improve how it sounds. So we're going to be doing that soon. I need to get this one knocked out. Yeah, I've been like going back and forth. I originally had these terminal strips mounted up here, and then the wire was going to have to go around here, and there were signal paths crossing and stuff, so I had to unsolder all that and move them back to the back, and then we put this up. Anyway, that's part of the process, and why it takes so long to build a prototype is the decisions you have to make on getting things to mount. And as you can see, I had to angle mount this transformer. If I was going to use these in a build in the future, I would get a 3-inch thick chassis. And so, yeah, you guys that were going to use that bomb should probably get a 3-inch chassis if you're going to use this. What is this, a 266 L14 transformer? So, yeah, I'll go over that when we're doing that build. But that's quickly going to be here in the future. I got the chassis back from the powder coater. They look beautiful. The ones that I had fabbed up here locally. I know some of you guys are interested in buying them. Probably need to do a phone call about it. Some people have emailed me for pricing and stuff, and it's kind of hard to price it when I don't know exactly what you're going to be doing with it. And so I'll probably be giving some of you guys a call about that. Probably going to be, especially if you want all the holes drilled, like the transformer holes and speaker jacks and everything, where all you got to do is assemble it. Probably going to be around the $300 range for a bare chassis, but it does come with the tube rings and some other small parts. Probably going to throw in an IC connector and that kind of thing. But anyway, let's talk. I want to get these things out there so people that are waiting to build an amplifier based off not being able to do the fab work, I want to take care of that so you can build some amps. So finally I want to talk about an email I got, and it's hard to not feel emotional about this. Somebody emailed me and said that they were watching my videos several years ago, started, and they got COVID. And they ended up with long COVID. And they had really bad brain fog. They just couldn't think clearly. They couldn't stay focused for very long. And I know some friends of mine that's happened to. And it's kind of a sad thing whenever somebody has a handicap or some kind of thing that's keeping them from doing what they love. So whoever wrote this email said they continued watching my videos and were inspired to get better watching me build stuff. And I want to be able to do that. And they weren't asking for any help or anything. They were just I finally found the doctor that figured out what was wrong, and I had inflammation in my brain, and they got me on some meds that helped with the inflammation, and said now I can think clearly again. And I built one of your EAR clones. I'm fixing to do one of your 2A3 amps, and just wanted to thank me for putting these videos out there to keep him motivated to get well. And guys, to think that me making these videos could have that much impact on somebody's life is something I never thought about while I'm making them. And I can't describe how much joy that gives me, knowing that I was able to help somebody like that. So, just wanted to share that with you from the heart. Anyway, that's it for this week's Monday Monologue. Again, I'm going to try to keep these things fairly regular, but sometimes stuff comes up or I'm just not in the mood, and I don't want to make a Monday Monologue that I don't have my heart into it. And this week I do. So, hope you've enjoyed this. Hope you'll follow along with my exploration of reel-to-reel tape goodness and this whole external tape preamp IQ, EQ, thing. And we can have fun with that. And I know some of you guys are on a tighter budget. Some of you guys have a much bigger budget. And so I'm trying to put stuff out there that everybody can enjoy. So we will see you next week for the Monday Monologue.